Alright guys, we're ready to finish up this alien. I think we can wrap this all up in this last lecture. So before we get started, I want to fix a problem I created with the feet in the last lecture. I didn't notice this till I watched the video back, but go into edit mode and notice that this edge right here is kind of stretchy. So you see this area right here. We really don't need to select way down there. I could have got away with making my seam up here. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that as a seam and get rid of these seams because I think we could probably do a better job unwrapping that if we treat this as part of the foot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and clear that and this little edge right there. Just like this. So clear all those. And probably let's go ahead and rewrap the legs and just get that done and over with. Doesn't look like much change, but it is a little bit better. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is put seams around the arms just like I did the legs. So these edges right here are going to be marked as seams. That's going to separate the body from the arms. Now that that's done, I can loop select just the body. I'm going to hide everything else. And let's focus in on the body real quick. Basically, what we're going to do is going to create an edge loop. If I do a loop selection, it'll go all the way around the whole body. I actually only want about, probably about half of that selection. So I'm going to just show you manually from the middle point right here where it branches off, right there, all the way around to the top of the head, down the back side of the head like this, all the way down the spine, and right to basically the butt, and then where it branches off right here, connect to the circles. What this is going to do is it's going to allow this little flap right here to kind of open up so that it'll kind of dangle down the front here, and it'll allow this whole thing will be cut like this, so it'll allow this thing to kind of flap open so that you'll see that geometry turned off to the side like this, and same thing on the other side. However, we need to create some kind of relief cut around the eyebrows too. So what's going to end up happening is right here in the middle of the forehead, this is going to be like a T section right here. Very typical to do this with human heads. We're going to do the same thing with our alien head. But before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and mark what I have as a seam. Now I can select this part right here, zoom in on it, and I have much more control over the axis of this right now. So I'm going to go ahead and select basically the same thing on each side. I don't know how far to go, honestly. I think that might be far enough. So let's just test it out by marking this as a seam and then going over here and actually unwrapping this thing. Let me zoom in on this first so we can see it. Okay, unwrap. Yeah, it actually came out pretty good. Maybe even a little better than I thought. I'm going to rotate it so that it's facing in the right direction. I'm holding it on control to snap it because it seems to be at a certain angle. And that seems to work out pretty good. So, well, I guess before we say we're done, let's fly around and make sure it looks right. Maybe it might be easier to look at this in object mode. You can see that the checkerboarding looks pretty solid, so we are definitely done with the body. Let's go to the feet next. So let's go ahead and unhide everything. I'm going to select a small portion of the feet and link select them, zoom in on them, and hide everything else. The feet are going to be pretty simple. All we need to do is basically mark a seam down the middle this way on both feet. Make sure it goes all the way around, that there's nothing that gets missed. I'll go ahead and mark that as a seam. The theory here is that the bottoms will be its own island, the tops will be its own island. There'll be a little bit of stretching around here, but because they're in the creases, it shouldn't be such a big deal. And let's see how this turns out, okay? So let's select all and unwrap. And as I said, there'll be a little bit of stretching in the creases between the toes, maybe even along the tips of the toes. But again, You're not going to see this because it's covered up by the toenails. So that's kind of cool. And I think all I'm going to do with this is just rotate these to straighten them out. And maybe if it makes sense, do a little wiggle test. This is a top piece. This is a bottom piece. This is another top piece. And obviously this is another bottom. I'm going to snap similar pieces together. So I'm going to put the tops with the tops and the bottoms with the bottoms. And they don't have to be exact. If I wanted to, I could spend the time and make these. I won't be able to move them to make them fit, but I could probably line up all the vertices if I wanted to. I'm not going to bother doing that, and I don't think that it's really necessary at all anyway. So this is the top, this is the bottom, and I'm just going to put them together kind of like this so that I know that this is the top and that's the bottom. And that's about it. We're done with the feet. So let's move on to the next part. Only thing left is the hands. So let's select those and hide everything else. We're going to treat this exactly like we just did with the feet, and loop select this edge here, follow it around, make sure it continues all the way around. It does not, so we're going to have to select that and select that edge right there so that it goes all the way around on both sides. Mark that as a seam. Back to the UV editing window, select all, and unwrap. This should look pretty much just like the feet did. Again, I'm going to rotate these so that they're all going with the, with the grid pattern. We're going to figure out which side's the top and the bottom real quick with a little bit of a wiggle test. So this is a bottom. This is a top. This is another bottom. And this is the top. I'm going to put the tops and the bottoms together like this. So these are the two tops and these are the two bottoms. Something like that. And that makes sense to me. So I'm just going to grab all that and put it together. Maybe in preparation for later on when I have to separate all this stuff, I'll just set it over there like that. And I kind of wish I had made preparations all along, but I didn't. Because now it's actually time to build our UV atlas, and that's not going to be fun because everything is piled up in a big clump in the middle. First step to doing that is to average all of the island scales. But let's go back to object mode and notice that the eyes and the eyelids are missing, and we want those to be actually part of this atlas. So what we're going to have to do is join them all back together, and when we do this, we're going to lose all of our pivot points for the eyes and the eyelids. That means after we create our atlas, we're going to have to re-separate all the eyes and eyelids and reassign the pivot points all over again. But it shouldn't be a problem. We have a good formula for that. So I'm going to select all and Control J to join all of this together. When I did that, I just got lucky because the alien was the selected character when I did that. But it's possible you might have the eyelid or the eyeball or something as the object name right now. And if that's the case, you might want to rename it. And if that was the case, you'd find that the origin might be up here rather than down there. So you might want to reset the origin. Okay, let's go into edit mode. And what we're going to want to do is basically fix all the checkerboarding so that it's all exactly the same size. When there's a lot of pieces like this and it's all mixed up, it's a lot easier to just select all and go over here and average island scale. And that will put everything at the scale that it needs to be. However, we still have to go over here and rearrange stuff. You'll notice that the hands that I put off to the side, the scale has been changed. So before, there was a nice margin in between them all. Now I have to go and reset the margins on these. So I'm going to have to do that with everything. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes and do this. And when I'm done, I'll come back. Okay, so I've got everything kind of separated now, but I still haven't put it into the texture atlas space. It turns out when I move stuff around, I left little remnants behind. So I just noticed this just now. So what I'm going to do is undo a few times and hopefully put stuff back where it was originally until I find where that occurred. and I'm going to have to start this whole thing over again. So it turns out it was right there where that happened. I got very lucky. Probably had a few more steps to go, but that's where the problem occurred. You can see a little bit of geometry right there. It got left behind. I didn't notice it, and if I go undo enough times, it'll put everything back together. So what is this? This is the hair things. What I should have done when I selected this is I should have link selected these like this, and then lasso selected them. Apparently there's some problem with those, but what I'm going to do is just move them out here. And I've got to be very careful about how I do this, because apparently there's some problem with the geometry in one or more of these things where I'm not sure where it is, but somewhere in here there's a problem where some geometry can get left behind. I'm going to select these one at a time. So here's one of them, and I'm going to lasso select all of it and put it over here. Here's another one, lasso select that, and I'm just going to move it over here. Here's another one, lasso select this, and so on and so forth. Now select all of those. They should be separated pretty far now. That allows me to manipulate these a little bit easier without having to worry about that problem so much. However, when I go to move these later, I'm probably going to have the same problem. I got to watch out for that. So I kind of wanted to stop what I was doing right there and fix this problem before I got too far. So you can see when I grab it and move it apart, it's doing it on two of them. So specifically these two right here, the back two. I'm not going to worry too much about it. I just know that there's a problem, and I know to look out for it, and I think that I'm good enough with that. We're almost done with this thing, so I'm just going to finish what I started here. So you can see the last couple pieces here are like, this is the interior, either the mouth or the behind the eyes. Looks like the mouth. I could see it kind of moving inside of there. This is obviously the behind the eyes, because those are those two big weird pieces. And this is all of the toenails and fingernails. So I'm just going to move that out here for now. These two pieces I'm going to just temporarily move out here. And that leaves the texture atlas kind of open right now. Now, as I'm sure you can probably tell, this is pretty big. There's no way to fit all of that stuff in here. I couldn't even fit this thing in there. So I'm going to do is select all and scale all of it down to a point where it seems to kind of make sense. And I could probably even go a little smaller than this. Something like that. I might be able to fit the remaining pieces around here, so I'm going to go ahead and give that a try now. Again, I got to be very careful with these, so I think I'm going to move those first. So I'm just going to temporarily move these up and out of the way, and I'm going to focus just on these pieces right now. I think that's probably a good spot for those. All right, I got it all to fit. Looks pretty good. There's a little extra space in there, but I think I'm happy with this. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at this thing. And this is object mode. We're almost done with this guy. The last thing we want to do is reset the pivot points on the eyes and the eyelids. And that really shouldn't take that long. Let's go over here and select the eyes and the eyelids. So just loop select those just like this. We're going to hide everything but those, because that's really all we need to focus on for the moment. And we're going to separate them all one at a time. So we're going to separate that. We're going to separate this, and so on. And we go back here, we can select the eye like that. I'm going to hide everything else, leaving just the eyes and the eyelids. Now notice that they're all named Alien 3. That's not necessarily a good thing, so I got to go rename all of these as well. This is lid top left. This is lid top right. Lid bot left. lid bot right, eye left, eye right. Okay, pivot points. We'll start here. Edit mode, we're going to want to move the cursor in between those 2 points, remember? Right there. Easy. Snap cursor to selected. Go back to object mode and transform origin to 3D cursor. We can select this. The cursor is in the spot that it needs to be. Transform origin to 3D cursor. Let's do the other eyelids, and then we'll do the eyeballs last. So we could do the same thing over here. Select these 2 vertices. Snap cursor to selected. Back to object mode. Transform origin to 3D cursor. Select the bottom eyelid. Transform origin to 3D cursor. Now the only thing left to do is the eyeball. So I'm going to select this one first. Go in here. We want to basically grab the middle vertex. Notice that the cursor is already there, which is kind of cool. So that kind of proves to me that that is the right place to pivot. And let's go ahead, and we don't really need to reset the cursor because it's already there. So let's just go to here and transform origin to 3D cursor. I kind of want to double check to make sure it's rotating correctly. It looks right to me. Good. Now the last eyeball. We're going to have to move the cursor this time. But again, just like before, it's these 2. So one's in the middle and the next vertex in, just like that. So we want to go ahead and snap cursor to selected, back to object mode, and transform origin to 3D cursor. Now that should rotate perfectly. Just like that. Okay, we're done with those. We can unhide everything else. And this guy is now completely finished. Congratulations. We made it through all the custom objects and nobody got hurt. In the next section of the course, we're going to be working with a human figure. I'm going to show you a cool tool to actually create human models, and it's free. So I look forward to that, and I'll see you in the next section.